Hi, everyone. Welcome to Time Camp again. I'm Sparrow. I'm so excited to see you. And we've got the results from our quick poll. Everyone who pushed the button said, yeah, they've had a compulsion to do something really great. And we had other answers from some folks who are meeting in groups that people have had compulsions to do something silly and to read more books. That is my favorite answer, obviously. I'm going to hide the results, see if we get the webcam share. Fantastic. There we go. Let me adjust all the things so you're looking less at my ceiling and maybe more at me. That's awesome. I'll take out my earbuds. No, I won't, because my microphone is in my earbuds. That's why I was leaving it there. Okay, now I'm looking at you. And now I'm going to launch my, theoretically, I'm going to launch my screen. You like the pictures of the wolves? And here come my slides. There we go. Welcome. I am so glad you made it today to Time Camp, where we're talking about A Wrinkle in Time, the novel by Madeline L'Engle, written in the early 1960s, but such a good book that it's still alive and talking to us and entertaining us and making us happy to read all these years later. I'm here with Sharon Hoff. Sharon is my friend in Arizona. She is organizing your questions and your comments and sending them to me in a little extra window on my screen. So Sharon is our questioner and commenteer. Thank you so much for all your help, Sharon. She's really nice. You guys should meet her. And again, I'm Sparrow. I am your fellow reader and your discussionista. And if you need to communicate with camp during off times, use camp@signumu.org. Even if you're watching this video asynchronously, which means out of the same time that we're broadcasting, get it? Time camp, but you can watch it at other times, right? Even if you're watching asynchronously, we want to hear from you. Maybe you've got a question that you'd like me to talk about the next day. I have a friend, Lyra Ann, in Vermont, who is not able to be with us when we're broadcasting, so she and her family are just watching at supper time. Don't hesitate to send me a question to talk about the next day. Also, when you might be watching weeks later, when you finally discover the time camp, the really great folks who are sponsoring and giving us gifts for stuff like the server time on the computer want to know. I'm so happy to help you out. How many kids enjoyed that? Blast us a little note, let us know. Today we're talking about Chapter 2, Mrs. Who, and a reminder, I see that someone is checking in and saying they might not make it on a particular single day. You guys will get your registered people. You will get the links to this broadcast or the Thursday broadcast to watch at a later time. That's fine if you've got to miss a day, no problem. We'll miss your participation, but please have a wonderful life and go do the stuff that you need to do. All righty, let us see what we're talking about. Remember that we've got threads, which is ideas that seem to follow along throughout the story. We've got science. We know Meg's mother is a scientist, and I'm going to help you know that science as an idea is a thread carried through the whole thing. Not necessarily classroom science like ecology or environmental science, even though they're very cool, they're in a classroom, they're studied a certain way, but science, the way of thinking, where we observe carefully, we make inferences from what we observe, we form hypotheses about what might happen if, or that we have a proposed idea, a theory about why things are that way. And then we perform experiments to get closer and closer to really good understanding. Okay, so science as a way of thinking. I want to add something to our threads, and that is the idea of a happy medium. Mrs. Murray said yesterday, Meg, I wish you could find a happy medium. I forget the exact quote, but you know, your emotions are so big. I wish you could be in a more steady place. Interesting. I want you to watch today for that idea as we're going through slides. I discovered that I really love this chapter. I took down a lot of words. So when I'm reading aloud, you guys listen and process. Think about, what do you observe? Because we're doing science. Are there any hints of a happy medium? Any references to being balanced or steady or something like that? Go ahead and write comments to Sharon because she's so wonderfully organized, and she'll send those thoughts to me. I see a comment from Bella that says, "What's that?" I don't know. I would love to tell you what that is. Would you write a little bit longer question? Maybe I used a word that is a new word. Maybe I do this a lot. I referred to something that I already had in my head, but I hadn't already shared with you. So please call me on it. Tell me what it is you want me to clarify or give you a definition or whatever. And Val, oh, my daughter Valkyrie is here today and she's helping me by making crafty things. Will you bring those over to me sometime in the next half hour? Thank you, because Val had this great idea for an experiment. Oh, what is a happy medium? Thank you, Bella. Good question. In this book, it means at least 3 different things, but we've only been introduced to the first meaning. The first meaning is, can you find a medium amount of emotion, which is kind of happily stable and not pulling you off your game and off your sense of security? I wish you could find a happy medium. That is the first meaning. And we're going to, yeah, someone already knows what the second meaning is. Absolutely. We'll save it for that chapter, okay? Excellent. Thank you, guys. So science and happy medium, you guys keep thinking about that while I read some of our slides aloud. Her mother carefully turned over 4 slices of French toast, then said in a steady voice, "No, Meg, don't hope it was a dream. I don't understand it any more than you do. One thing I've learned is that you don't have to understand things for them to be. I'm sorry I showed you I was upset. Your father and I used to have a joke about a tesseract." I see both science and happy mediumness, mediumitude, mediumosity in that one paragraph. Does anyone else see what I'm seeing? This is the morning after the hurricane night and Mrs. Whatsit's unexpected visit. Tell me what you see that is related to scientific thinking or happy medium of emotions. Also, I see French toast, which is seeing and I hear it sizzle and I'm smelling it and it's so good. And I'm kind of tasting it too. And I am from where there's a lot of maple syrup. So now I'm hungry. Oh boy. Any other thoughts? Great. Yes, there's the first one. Mother said in a steady voice, right? She's being medium. Now there's a sign. Oh, great thought from Jubilee. She observes, your father and I used to have a joke about tesseract. She has made an inference that by Mother bringing it up, that's an important idea in the story and we're going to learn more about it. Yes, absolutely. I'm so excited for that. Bella, you've got it. Meg's mom is trying to talk in a steady way because she's being scientific, kind of objective, but she's also got that happy medium vibe going on. I find, yeah, Jenny M., you got it. Mrs. Murray does not want to deny a difficult fact or experience. She doesn't want to turn away from it. Don't hope it was a dream, because she's scientific. She's a scientist and she sees facts. She's not afraid of facts. She says, I don't have to understand it for it to exist. I have to observe it, maybe make a hypothesis. Fantastic. You notice, I'm sorry I showed you I was upset. Not only is Meg's mother being in the middle there, in that happy medium, she was sorry to express being outside the happy medium. What a shame. Oh, Jenny, you and I are in total agreement. The fact that Mrs. Murray says you don't have to understand for them to be very scientific. Notice gravity. I can feel gravity. Gravity is pulling me down into the comfy chair. But gravity is a theory because there's nothing labeled, this is gravity and it's a thing. Like, okay, this is gold glitter. Why? Because my kid gave me the materials to send glitter bombs to my friends for my birthday, because my kid loves me. I can see the thing. I can't see gravity. I can't observe it. I can only observe its effects. It isn't proven. It's a theory. All right, let's move on. I took a lot of quotes down, so I will move on. Oh, here we go. We know you have a great mind and all, Mother, Sandy said, but you don't have much sense, and certainly Meg and Charles don't. I know. We're morons. Meg was bitter. I wish you wouldn't be such a dope, Meg. Syrup, please. Sandy reached across the table. You don't have to take everything so personally. Use a happy medium, for heaven's sakes. You just goof around in school and look out the window and don't pay attention. Well, there's literally happy medium. I am betting you that Sandy has heard their mother previously say, oh, I wish you could find a happy medium. And now in the book, there's that emphasis. So personally, use a happy medium. He's kind of parroting back and chanting these words. Isn't that interesting? Mother, you've got a great mind, but you don't have much sense. Interesting. Something's going on there. You're right. Sandy is a new character, and as we read, Sandy and Dennis are always referred to at the same time. They are a pair of twins, and in age, they are between Meg and Charles Wallace. Jenny observes, it bothers me that Mrs. Murray feels she shouldn't show Meg she's upset. Yes. Hold that. Here's the rest of her comment. I think it can be helpful sometimes to let your kid see the emotion and then see how the parent copes with it, to be a bit more honest and to model how you cope with these things. Sometimes the happy medium isn't the best way to deal with this situation. Jenny, again, you and I are in complete agreement. If the grown-ups in your life are always calm and you've got huge complicated emotions to deal with, how do you learn how to deal with huge complicated emotions? You don't want to see parents having really huge emotions. That could be scary. But what if you see them have some and then work through it? We see mother being unafraid of facts and saying, I'm going to approach this fact even though I don't understand it. But in the emotional realm, there's more coming up. Hold on to that thought, okay? Yes, Izzy, we are going to add another chord for Sandy and Dennis. Don't worry. Jubilee. Sandy's rather loving to his mother and siblings. He's willing to say what's on his mind. He's really honest. "Ah, don't be such a dope. You made this mistake. Oh, mother, you don't have much sense." I like that observation. The kids in this family know that they can be honest even if what they're saying is a little bit critical of the parents. I think mother and father, before he disappeared, have done a really good job parenting. Their kids are smart and free and honest and actually really nice. They're nice kids. Um, Jubilee, I see you've got both sides of that argument. He's honest, but that's not necessarily kind. He's not necessarily doing it in the nicest way, right? You just goof around in school and look out the window and don't pay any attention. Is that designed to make Meg feel better? No. Is that designed to make Meg really inspired to do better? No. Good noticing, Jubilee. Yeah, when the word moron is first used, I think that Natalie or someone in her library group is tracking the word moron. Fascinating, because we see it again. Oh, I have a question coming through from Izzy. Can I see you guys? I cannot. Your webcams are off. Go to Webinar. The software won't even look at your webcams. You are completely private. If you use the question box for putting in your comments, they go directly to Sharon. Some of you have found the chat box because I was answering a question earlier with the chat box. Better to use the question box than the chat box so that my eyes don't get confused, because they're two different things and they're different colors on my screen. So, oh my goodness. All right, let's move on. There's more coming, and all of these are going to tie together. This is the principal speaking later that day. "Miss Porter tells me you were inexcusably rude." Meg shrugged. "Don't you realize you just make everything harder for yourself by your attitude?" the principal asked. "Now, Meg." All of a sudden, we've got a teacher about to say something positive. "I'm convinced that you can do the work and keep up with your grade if you'll apply yourself. Some of your teachers are not. You're going to have to do something about it yourself. Nobody can do it for you." Meg was silent. "Well, what about it, Meg?" "I don't know what to do," Meg said. "You could do your homework for one thing. Wouldn't your mother help you?" Wow, that page was an emotional roller coaster for me. First, Meg is in trouble and she's being called inexcusably rude. What do you do to that? You shrug. She didn't want to say the teacher's a liar, and she doesn't want to say, no, I was perfectly polite. So she really did take a medium answer, but it's not a happy one. And the principal starts saying helpful things. "I'm convinced you can do the work. All you need to do is apply yourself. You're going to have to do it yourself." And that might be a little bit, gosh, you're a kid, so I'm not going to help you. Some of that vibe. But I've also got that very honest thing where if you want to change, you can have all the support in the world, but you're the one who has to do the work. So he's right. She's the one who has to do the work. And I feel sad that he's not offering some support, someone to check in with, maybe someone to coach her, because listen to what she says. She really has said the truth. "I don't know what to do." She needs a coach. And then he becomes kind of a unpleasant person to hang around with. "You could do your homework for one thing." And then, like, she knows she needs to do her homework, or at least hand it in. Sometimes I used to do my homework every night. I kind of enjoyed homework. A little bit geeky there. And then I'd put it in my folder, and then I'd lose my folder. And so I wouldn't hand in homework for like weeks. Oops. I didn't have a coach to talk me through always putting my folder in the right place. That's all she needs. And then he says, wouldn't your mother help you? So maybe he's saying mother could be a great coach in these organizational skills, but it sounds a little bit like, can your mother do your homework for you? It's just so it gets handed in because you can't do your homework. So it's like a two-edged sword. So my emotions went up and down on that whole page, and I wonder if yours did too. Meg ignored this. This is after he said something about her father not coming back. Oh, Jubilee wrote in, it sounds like Mr. Jenkins is sympathetic at first, but he's not willing to take that important step to, oh, I'm scrolling. He's giving a suggestion. He's little, and then he's giving his advice, but he's not willing to ask what's making it difficult for her or why she doesn't know, why she can't participate appropriately. And then he starts asking about the father. Oi. No, that was Jenny who said that. It was Jubilee who says he's trying to be helpful and a little sympathetic, and he's giving his advice, and it's kind of a little twist. Ew. Meg ignored the twist about the father. She leaned over the desk toward the principal. Mr. Jenkins, you've met my mother, haven't you? You can't accuse her of not facing facts, can you? She's a scientist. She has doctor's degrees in both biology and bacteriology. Her business is facts. When she tells me that my father isn't coming home, I'll believe it. As long as she says father is coming home, then I'll believe that. Mr. Jenkins sighed again. No doubt your mother wants to believe that your father is coming home, Meg. Very well. I can't do anything else with you. Go on back to study hall. Try to be a little less antagonistic. Maybe your work would improve if your general attitude were more tractable. There's so much I want to say on this slide. How is a kid supposed to know how to deal with this? I'm quoting Jenny here. And doesn't he have any other resources to offer her? Yeah, you agree. Your emotions went up and down on that page. The fact is, when it was written in 1962, the idea of giving someone extra help on being organized really hadn't made it into public school yet. Interesting stuff. Okay. I want to make sure I point out three different things. First, Meg is now thinking like a scientist. My mother's business is science and facts. She says, father's coming home. I'm going to trust her what she's using her logic. She has observed the world as it is. She's made inferences. She said, I'm going to trust what my mother says. Really, ahead of all you gossiping neighbors who are being mean and smug. Okay. Yay. Second thing, Mr. Jenkins says, one insulting thing, no doubt your mother wants to believe your father is coming home, Meg. Not, she is a scientist, so she must be good with facts, but she wants to believe that he's coming back. Do you guys get, go ahead and write in your answer. Do you guys get what the gossip and rumor and inference is that the people who don't know the Murrays well are saying? Why father left the family? Put in your guesses. People are being really smug about this, and we're going to find out in a few pages. Also, Mr. Oh my goodness, I've got 4 things on this page. You got it. He definitely doesn't like the Murrays. There's one part of it. He's also talking about happy medium. If your attitude were more tractable, excellent new word from Latin tract, which means pull. If your general attitude were more able for me to pull you along, like pulling someone back into line, Maybe if you were more medium, but it's also got the sense of being obedient. Oh, huh. Hold on to that thought. The opposite of mulish. Yes, mules put their feet down if they do not wish to do the thing. And they weigh like half a ton. If the mule doesn't want to go over there along the nice straight row of corn, that's not where the mule is going. Mr. Jenkins is saying if you were more like a docile little cow than a stubborn, think for yourself mule, that would be better. It'd be a happy medium. Huh. Yes, Jenny says we're aware of why people think Mr. Murray left. Mr. Jenkins is probably also sexist. He has no respect for Mrs. Murray's intelligence and sense. Yes, and that sometimes dads leave their families for so many reasons. Sometimes they're deployed in the military. Sometimes they pass away. Sometimes they're growing in a new way and it's best for the family to change. And sometimes, remember, this is the 60s before we were talking about sometimes people have different lives. Nowadays, we are free to have different lives from our neighbors and to celebrate that. You know, my buddy Linda next door and my friends Patrick and Henry next door the other direction. Anyway, and there's so many dogs on my street. This was written at a time when every family had only one father, only one mother, and then an assortment of children. Exactly this configuration. And it was, ooh, maybe the father doesn't love the mother anymore if he left, or maybe the mother doesn't love the father anymore if she left. So it was a big deal when people, get this, didn't conform to expectations. Isn't that what he just said? Oh, thank you, Val. Isn't that what Mr. Jenkins just said? Maybe your work would improve if your general attitude were more conformist. And, and, I'm going to bring out one more thing. Now we know for certain that Mrs. Murray has doctor's degrees in both biology and bacteriology. She's not Mrs. Murray. She's Dr. Murray. And she has professional publications. She has earned 2 PhDs in very hard sciences. Not only is she brilliant, but she has earned the title doctor. And no one in this book calls her Dr. Murray. And that's not just one character disrespecting her. That is the whole culture of that time saying, well, women are mothers first, and you might call them doctor on their graduation day or on a formal paper, but they're not really doctors. They're mommies. Watch for that. Watch for people treating women differently. This is outside the text, because inside the text, we've got some really strong women. Okay, here we go. Let us see. When Meg got home from school, her mother was in the lab. The twins were at Little League, and Charles Wallace, the kitten, and Fortinbras were waiting for her. Fortinbras jumped up, put his front paws on her shoulders, gave her a kiss. Oh, good, now we've got dogs fun. And the kitten rushed to his empty saucer and mewed loudly. Come on, said Charles Wallace, let's go. Where? Meg asked. I'm hungry, Charles. I don't want to go anywhere till I've had something to eat. She was still sore from the interview with Mr. Jenkins, and her voice sounded cross. Charles Wallace looked at her thoughtfully as she went to the refrigerator and gave the kitten some milk, then drank a mugful herself. He handed her a paper bag. Here's a sandwich and some cookies and an apple. I thought we'd better go see Mrs. Whatsit. I just added that because I love that Charles Wallace knew when she was going to need help. Or food, right? He knew. Feed Meg. Feed Meg soon, or she won't go on an adventure with you. All right. They walked in silence for a moment through the fragrant woods, the rusty pine needles gentle under their feet. Up above them, the wind made music in the branches. Charles Wallace slipped his hand confidingly in Meg's, and the sweet little boy gesture warmed her so that she felt the tense knot inside her begin to loosen. Charles loves me at any rate, she thought, even though it felt like the whole rest of the world didn't really love her that day. If we've got any trackers who are keeping track of hands touching, there it is. Charles Wallace slipped his hand confidingly in Meg's. Wow. Watch for hands touching. Turns out to be important. And school awful again today? He asked after a while. Yes. I got sent to Mr. Jenkins. He made snide remarks about father. Charles Wallace nodded sagely. I know. How do you know? Charles Wallace shook his head. Can't quite explain? You tell me, that's all. But I never say anything. You just seem to know. Everything about you tells me, Charles said. How about the twins? Meg asked. Do you know about them too? I suppose I could if I wanted to, if they needed me. But it's sort of tiring, so I just concentrate on you and Mother. You mean you read our minds? Charles Wallace looked troubled. I don't think it's that. It's being able to understand a sort of language. Like, if I concentrate very hard, I can understand the wind talking with the trees. You tell me, you see, sort of inadvertently. Wow, what a great little brother is Charles Wallace. He knows Meg and Mother are the most vulnerable members of the family, so he keeps an eye on them in his reading nonverbal cues or even maybe kind of psychic love connection, even though it's a little tiring. And he can understand the wind talking with the trees. I don't know if you've ever done this. Please send in an answer if you have an answer. Have you ever listened to the wind talking with the trees? Number one. Have you ever felt like you might understand it? Yeah, I see someone say yes to me already. Fantastic. That is something, once I read this, I think I was 9 the first time I read it. I started listening to trees ever since then. How fun. Send your answers in through Sharon, and because I want to see how many more tree fans we have. All right. I realize I'm shaking my computer a little bit. Sorry. Here's what he was saying. You tell me, you see, sort of inadvertently. That's a good word, isn't it? I got Mother to look it up in the dictionary for me this morning. I really must learn to read, except I'm afraid it will make it awfully hard for me in school next year if I already know things. I think it will be better if people go on thinking I'm not very bright. Then they won't hate me quite so much. What do you see? What do you observe? What do you notice? What do you infer from this? Number one, he has Mother looking things up in the dictionary instead of telling it out of her brain, so he gets the whole dictionary definition. I've got someone else who likes to listen to the wind talking to the trees. Yeah, sort of, at the library. Absolutely. That is my challenge to you sometime the next couple of days. Listen to it. It's fantastic. Charles Wallace knows people don't like him. They hate me, but they won't hate me quite so much if I don't know how to read yet. And kind of sounds like he doesn't mind. He says it will be better if people go on thinking I'm not very bright. Huh. He is one complicated character, isn't he? He has a lot of emotional intelligence, knowing and predicting how people are going to feel. He seems to know how people think, not just what's going on with his own Meg and mother, but in general humans. I'm a little different. People might feel pretty uncomfortable around me unless they think I'm dumb. Hold on to that. There's more coming in a couple of slides. Ready? Oop, gotta click the thing. Oh, I just brought this out because we're going to have a little English teacher moment, because that's who I am. At the edge of the woods, Fortinbras stood in front of a boy, comma, barking furiously. That is the picture on the left. There's the dog, comma, barking furiously. And that phrase describes the dog, or Fortinbras. If that comma weren't there, it would be the picture on the right. The phrase barking furiously would modify boy because it's closest. At the edge of the woods, Fortinbras stood in front of a boy barking furiously. One of my favorite examples of commas saving lives. Who's barking at whom? Very important to know. All right, sorry, just I had to go there. Tell me about him, Meg, Charles Wallace demanded. Well, what I know about him, he's a couple of grades above me, and he's on the basketball team. Just because I'm tall. Calvin sounded a little embarrassed. Tall he certainly was, and skinny. His bony wrists stuck out of the sleeves of his blue sweater. His worn corduroy trousers were 3 inches too short. He had orange hair that needed cutting, and the appropriate freckles to go with it. His eyes were an oddly bright blue. Listen to all those colors. We've got one of those colors things going again. We've got blue, orange, blue sweater. He's embarrassed. He's tall. He's skinny. His wrists are bony, and they're longer than his sweater sleeves. His corduroy trousers are worn, so they're not brand new. And they're 3 inches too short, so he's been growing faster than he's been able to either let down the hems, or his mother let down the hems, or his auntie, or someone else let down the hems, or get a new pair of pants. His hair needs cutting. Oh, why hasn't it been cut? And he had freckles to go with it. His eyes were an oddly bright blue. I'm a sport. At that, Charles Wallace grinned widely. So am I. I don't mean like in baseball, Calvin said. Neither do I. I mean like in biology, Calvin said suspiciously. A change in gene, Charles Wallace quoted, resulting in the appearance in the offspring of a character which is not present in the parents, but which is potentially transmissible to its offspring. What gives around here? Calvin asked. I was told you couldn't talk. Thinking I'm a moron gives people something to feel smug about. Wow. Calvin said, I'm a sport in the sense of I'm kind of a genetic anomaly. I'm different from the rest of my family. Yeah, he's a kid. Charles Wallace agreed. Oh, wow, I'm a sport too. I'm kind of a genetic anomaly. Calvin said, I don't mean like the usual meaning of sport. And Charles Wallace is all, hello, I know the biological meaning of sport. Let me quote it to you. I thought you couldn't talk. And then Charles Wallace demonstrates very clearly that he knows a lot about human nature. I give people something to feel smug about. People kind of like to feel smug. What if I just had a really good idea and one of my students had the same idea at the same time? And I'm starting to write on the board this great idea. And they come in and say, oh, wow, Sparrow, what if we do this? They're going to feel good for having a good idea. Why would I ever say, oh, I thought of that first? I'm just going to erase that because the idea's out there. We're going to do the idea and say, that was good thinking. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, Izzy said he's kind of sorry. That's very subtle. Tell me more about that thought. Okay, hold on. What am I doing? I'm clicking more things. Meg sat down on the coarse grass at the edge of the woods. Fort gently twisted his collar out of Charles Wallace's hand and came over to Meg, lying down beside her and putting his head in her lap. Calvin tried now politely to direct his words towards Meg as well as Charles Wallace. Notice they ignored her for a few paragraphs. When I get this feeling, this compulsion, I always do what it tells me. I can't explain where it comes from or how I get it, and it doesn't happen very often. But I obey it. And this afternoon, I had a feeling I must come over to the haunted house. That's all I know, kid. I'm not holding anything back. Maybe it's because I'm supposed to meet you. You tell me. Charles Wallace looked at Kelvin probingly for a moment. Probingly, like he's thinking, he's pulling these feelings and thoughts, reading them. Then an almost glazed look came into his eyes, and he seemed to be thinking at him, at Kelvin. Kelvin stood very still and waited. At last, Charles Wallace said, okay, I believe you, but I can't tell you. I think I'd like to trust you. What an exchange. I love that Calvin is now trying to include Meg in the conversation. He's notice he skipped ahead a couple of grades in school. I'm not sure if we found that out at this point yet, but Meg and Calvin are actually the same age. So, he's what? He's 14. He made a social error by not including her. Fine. That's okay. It's how you learn. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm going to try to include you now. Well done, Calvin. I like that he's trying to be a more and more polite guy. And now he's explaining about his compulsions. I know some of you have said you get compulsions to read more books, or you get compulsions to do something silly. You get compulsions to do something awesome. You get compulsions too. I had a great uncle named Timothy Smith, and he got compulsions. And his big lesson in adulthood was that sometimes compulsions lead you to do great things, and sometimes they lead you to things that, in hindsight, were fairly stupid. And being an adult means thinking about that before you do the thing, right? Like check the safety rules. While we're talking compulsions, I want you to say, wear your bike helmet. Excellent. Right, can we get another slide? We can get another slide. Maybe you'd better come home with us and have dinner. Well, sure, but what would your mother say to that? Calvin asked. She'd be delighted. Mother's all right. She's not one of us, but she's all right. What about Meg? Meg has it tough, Charles Wallace said. She's not really one thing or the other. What do you mean, one of us? Meg demanded. What do you mean I'm not one thing or the other? Not now, Meg, Charles Wallace said slowly. I'll tell you about it later. He looked at Calvin, then seemed to make a quick decision. Okay, let's take him to meet Mrs. Whatsit. If he's not okay, she'll know. He started off on his short legs toward the dilapidated old house. I notice I haven't gotten any comments in a couple minutes. Did you guys? I'm thinking when we first met Calvin and his wrists are sticking out and his pants are too short, Did you guys make any inferences about that? I'm going to give you a minute. And he needed a haircut. Go ahead and write to Sharon. Yeah, he is not really taken care of by his family. That's it! Natalie, gorgeous. And that's on this current slide. Meg isn't one thing or the other. She's not one thing or the other, which is kind of one way of saying she's in the middle. But Charles does not see her as a happy medium. She's not got this stability. What fascinating things are happening? The haunted house was half in the shadows of the clump of elms in which it stood. The elms were almost bare now, and the ground around the house was yellow with damp leaves. The late afternoon light had a greenish cast which the blank windows reflected in a sinister way. An unhinged shutter thumped. Something else creaked. Meg did not wonder. The house had a reputation for being haunted. A board was nailed across the front door, but Charles Wallace led the way around to the back. The door there appeared to be nailed shut too, but Charles Wallace knocked, and the door swung slowly outward, creaking on rusty hinges. Up in one of the elms, an old black crow gave its raucous cry, and a woodpecker went into a wild rat-a-tat-tat. A large gray rat scuttled around the corner of the house, and Meg let out a stifled shriek. They get a lot of fun over using all the typical props, Charles Wallace said in a reassuring voice. Come on, follow me. I brought this out because of all the great images. And then Charles Wallace goes, yeah, it's dressed up as a haunted house. I have a note from Jenny. She assumed Calvin's family might not have a lot of money, and there might not be a lot of time and attention for him. It's exactly what I was thinking. Notice he says I'm like number 4 of 7 kids or 8 kids or 11 kids or something like that. Yeah, because he's bright and can get along on his own. He might not be the one that the parents are really hovering over and giving all their attention to. I agree. Calvin put a strong hand to Meg's elbow, and Fort pressed against her leg. Happiness at their concern was so strong in her that panic fled, and she followed Charles Wallace into the dark recesses of the house without fear. Bella, yeah, he's got a huge family. I forget how many kids. Wow. The human touch. And this qualifies as one of the hand holding things because one of the hands is holding someone else. Strong hand to Meg's elbow. Holding of hands makes things a lot better for Meg. She had big fear, but it was pushed out by happiness at their concern so strong. Not a medium. Maybe Meg needs big emotions to help her balance the other emotions. We're going to keep thinking about that. All right. The plump little woman beamed at him, and this is Mrs. Who, of course. Why, Charlesy, my pet, le cœur a ses raisons que les raisons ne connaît point. French, Pascal, the heart has its reasons whereof reason knows nothing. But that's not appropriate at all, Charles said crossly. Isn't Mrs. Who darling? Over the course of the book, she uses quotations a lot, and you've seen it right here in her introductory chapter. What do you think? What could you infer about how Mrs. Who quotes other people? I'm gonna give you a minute. Mrs. Who quotes other people. Why? I've got a note from one of you saying there are probably scientific studies pointing out that holding hands with someone helps you not feel afraid. Being with your people helps you not feel afraid. I'm going to move on. I know you guys are typing, but I've got 10 minutes left. Ab honesto virum bonum nihil deterret. Seneca. Nothing deters a good man from doing what is honorable. And he's a very good man, Charles E. Darling, but right now he needs our help. Who? Meg demanded. And little Megsy! Lovely to meet you, sweetheart. Oh, that's my dog who thinks I'm greeting someone at the door. Sorry. Your father, of course. Now, go home, loves. The time is not yet ripe. Don't worry. We won't go without you. Get plenty of food and rest. Feed Calvin up. Now, off with you. I love Mrs. Who. And I've got a great comment here. Okay. She's widely read, so she's seen a lot of other people's words. And she may not be able to think of how to express herself in her own words. So she borrows the words from Pascal and from Seneca. Pascal was in French. Seneca wrote in Latin. Languages are awesome. If you ever need encouragement to study a cool language, write to camp@signumu.org because we will say, yes, study a lot of languages. It's hard for Mrs. Who to describe things. Yeah, she's using other people's words because they got it right. Why would she have to invent something new? She's been around a long time and knows a lot. She knows all these books. She knows all these quotations. Jubilee, you might even infer that Mrs. Who has been around a long time alive. She might even possibly have talked to these people. You know, Seneca was speaking Latin, so that's like a lot of years ago, like a couple of thousand. Okay, interesting. She's definitely well read. Thank you. She's seen a lot of the world. Natalie's pointing out that she's old in capital letters. She's really old. Oh, Natalie, what a great observation. Pascal and Seneca said those things succinctly, clearly, and with a crystal clarity that is like poetry, like the meaning got distilled into perfect words. Mrs. Who wants the power of those words, so she uses the word poems. And yeah, she has a hard time speaking in her own words. Beautifully done, everyone. I love all these comments. Keep them coming. Oh, feed Calvin up. Clearly he's skinny, needs more food. And she just mentions your father, of course. Like Mrs. Watson says, oh, there's such a thing as a tesseract and gotta go. This is getting more and more exciting for me, and I hope it is for you guys too. Charles, Meg said, I don't understand. Charles took her by the hand, dragged her away from the house. Fortinbras ran on ahead, and Calvin was close behind them. No, I don't either yet. Not quite. I'll tell you what I know as soon as I can. But you saw a fort, didn't you? Not a growl, not a quiver, just as though there weren't anything strange about it. So you know it's okay. I think Charles has inferred from observing the world that animals, especially Fortinbras, has a sense of when something's dangerous to his family and he should growl, or when something's perfectly okay. Oh, yeah, time traveling ladies who live in a haunted house, no problem. If it was a tramp, I'd be after him. But the nice ladies who speak in other languages, perfectly safe. Fort, you've got a really good judge of character. I love this dog. Alrighty. Lead on, moron, Calvin cried gaily. I have never even seen your house, and I have the funniest feeling. For the first time in my life, I'm going home. I gotta say, guys, that makes me a little weepy again. Remember, I get a little weepy. That makes me feel so good that someone who maybe at his regular house where he lives doesn't get so much attention and doesn't get like new comfortable things and has to share a lot. He probably has hand-me-down clothes. He might not like all the people in his family or the situation they're in. And suddenly he feels like he's going home. I love that. Yay, Calvin. I am so pleased. All right. And remember to write down if you've got an experience of that, that you're suddenly doing something and you know it without having been told it or reading it or something. Also, think about how do you feel on the inside when you're in a place that feels like home? And is that in your room or is that in your house or is that in the woods nearby? Do you have a special place that your insides go? Oh. Jubilee points out, yeah, dogs are a good judge of character. That's exactly what Charles Wallace was thinking. That's what I think too, because I think dogs are a good judge of character. All right, time to wrap up. I told you I'm doing an experiment. Hold on. Because I started doing the character braid yesterday and it was kind of messy and funny looking. So my wonderful kid Val said, why don't you change your materials to something easier to use? So I have made these little signs and I'm using all the same kind of ribbon. This is actually embroidery floss, like you might make, what is the word? Thank you, friendship bracelets out of. And here, I'm going to put Mrs. Whatsit over here. So between now and tomorrow, I'm going to make knots where people interact with each other. Oh, let's give Mrs. Whatsit a really bright color. Here we go. Let's give her blue. This is a piece of foam board and some pins and some floss, and this might help me make this an organized thing that will be easy to read later. Oh, Mrs. Who comes up next. Let's give her also a bright. Oh, how about green for Mrs. Who? I like that. You guys probably know that there is a recently made movie about A Wrinkle in Time that is both really, really similar to the book and in some ways very different from the book. We're mostly not talking about the movie right now in this camp thing that we're doing. But I'd like to point out that they updated the quotations that Mrs. Who uses. She uses some of the old quotations from the book, some different old quotations, and some new quotations, which are even more on point and with which folks watching the movie might be more familiar, might be able to touch and know that they belong in the story because it's familiar. Am I about to say the other thing I was going to say? Nope, I'm going to save the other thing for tomorrow. I think we have not much time left. I'm going to put on Calvin. Sharon, would you send me the actual time? Because right now I cannot see the actual time on my stove because it's across the room. Because I don't have my glasses on. And I'm going to put on Calvin's braid. 1 minute to go. Fantastic. Thank you. All right. Check in with each other or check out with each other. How did we do on treating one another kindly? Did we cooperate? Did we have fun? What was your agreement? Did you stick to it? Are you feeling good? And remember, send us email if you've got any thoughts or questions that you want me to address tomorrow. This has been so much fun. On behalf of me and Sharon, thank you for joining us for Time Camp.